me see, are we online now? Yeah. Okay. Looks like we are online. And thank you, Rick, for joining my weekly entrepreneur sales marketing tips every Wednesday 11. And I'm a really big fan of you. I remember first time I met you at Rådhusplassen at the office down there, and you come in, and I've had a lot of Chatholm stuffs there, and I will always remember that thing, because he was coming in, you were some humble guy, really respectful, and you're always curious about people when they're meeting them. And for me, you are like a genius when it comes to entrepreneurship, and I have so much respect for you. Every time I sit down and talk with you, you make me think. I wrote it in the Facebook yesterday, but sometimes you have asked me a question that I've been thinking about for 6 weeks, and just because it's really, as an entrepreneur and also like a mentor and everything, I think you are an amazing person, and also that you are so down to earth. You have a lot of expertise, but you're still willing to learn and listen to young people and old people, and have this cool mindset. So thank you for joining today, and I look forward for this thing.
Peter Erik, it's my pleasure. Thank you. After all those kind words, I think I need to hang up and leave on a good note. But thank you very much. And when I met you, you were in the process of working with Inspirator, and you and Maria, you were influential in bringing a lot of amazing speakers to Norway. You know, some of the people that you guys managed to attract and get to Norway were amazing. And then when you worked with Elevate, you did the same thing. And so I've always had great respect for what you've done. You've really done some amazing things. And it's important. Before you did that, we weren't getting the quality of speakers in Norway that we deserve. And I really thought it was great. So thank you for that. And something I want to talk about a little bit today, because I want to talk about speakers, great speakers. Ever since I was a little boy, Well, first off, some of my earliest childhood memories are of speakers. My grandfather was a traveling country preacher, and he traveled from town to town to town in North Texas, little tiny farmer towns, where on Sunday mornings, he had a schedule of 4 weeks, and so every fourth week he was back at the same place. And on a Sunday morning, all of these farmers and really humble people, little old ladies, old men, would come and gather in a really basic kind of a church, not like you find in Norway with the cathedrals and things like these. Were really basic churches. And people would gather, and he would come and speak to them. And he wouldn't get up and preach about, hellfire and brimstone and all the kind of stuff that you'd expect with that. He'd get up and talk about life. And he was my hero. I was 6, 7 years old. And I remember driving with him on Sunday mornings to these little towns and sitting there and listening to him speak and being so touched by what a great speaker could do for an audience. So, again, it was a pleasure to meet you, and you've done a fantastic job of bringing and attracting so many amazing speakers to Norway. So let's talk about speaking today. Let's talk about public speaking and what makes great speakers.
Yeah, and when did you start to be interested in speaking?
Well, like I just said, I got a heavy dose of that in my family. I grew up in a church family where we went to church 3 times a week, every single week. It was just no question. That's what we did. And the preachers who preached they were pastors. A pastor is someone who tends a flock of sheep, if you can imagine. The pastor was there to take care of people. And so rather than calling it preaching, they were there to share life wisdom. I remember as a child listening to John F. Kennedy speak live before he was assassinated. I heard him speak. I heard Martin Luther King speak. I sat with my family and listened to Martin Luther King speak before he was assassinated. So my heroes have always been great speakers. And so I've always been interested in this.
So when did you start to speak by yourself?
My mother tells a funny story about that, Peter Erik, because when I was about 2.5, maybe almost 3 years old, I wasn't walking. And my mother was really worried that there was something fundamentally wrong with me. And she took me to the doctor. As she tells the story, and of course, when she tells it, it gets hilarious. But she took me to the doctor, all worried something was wrong with me. And the doctor checked me out and did everything. And finally he said, Mrs. Salmon, he said, there's absolutely nothing wrong with Rick except for the fact that he's got a full mouth of teeth. He's so busy talking, he doesn't have time to walk. So I think I started really early, Peter Erik.
Yeah.
But I've always been involved with sales. I've been involved with marketing. When I've worked as an entrepreneur, there's many things you have to do as an entrepreneur. You have to, you start a business. You take a concept or an idea and you bring it forward. But for me, the favorite part, the best part of all about being an entrepreneur is when you get to go out and talk about your baby. You get to talk about your business. You get to talk about what's special about what you're creating for your customers or maybe for your investors. Why investing in this is a really smart opportunity right now. And so that was the part I always loved in being an entrepreneur. And so after many years of working as an entrepreneur and doing lots of different tech startups, I realized, hey, why can't I work with this more on my own? So I started as a consultant working for companies like that. And it's been a fantastic journey. I've worked with, I'm not exaggerating when I say worked with thousands and thousands of entrepreneurs over the years, working with how they pitch, how they present, how they formulate their ideas, how they get really clear on what it is that's special about what they do. I asked you about that yesterday. I said, what is it about your business that is really special? What is the one thing you do for people? And you had to stop and think for a minute, but then you had some good answers.
Always think when you are asking questions because there are always some more meanings.
No, but it's valuable to do that and to have somebody who will ask you some questions about it.
Yeah, I like it. So, and you start to be interested in the voice. So, I have speakers. I have a lot of speakers who've been in Norway when I was running Elevate, and someone are good at selling from the stage, someone are good at storytelling, someone are good at the opening, and there's all these niches into speaking. And you are interested in the voice when people are speaking. So what happened? Why did you be interested in the voice, or where did it come from?
Yeah, good question. First off, everybody is primarily either visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. You know all about that. I'm sure you've studied NLP and stuff like that. I'm hugely auditory. So, right away I'm interested in voice, and it's always been something that I pay a lot of attention to. The voice of Martin Luther King is amazing. I just finished doing a study of the voices of Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler. And not to compare their politics by any means, I'm going to get myself in big trouble with that one. But both of them have incredible skills when it comes to talking to audiences. So I've always been fascinated by that. But I think I can tell you a story that illustrates this more than anything else, Peter Erik. I work with a lot of executives as well, not just entrepreneurs, but I work with a lot of senior executives. And about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, I got a phone call out of the blue. I got a phone call from a guy, and he said, Rick, I've heard about your work. I need your help. And he said, you've never met me before. And I go, okay, what's the deal? And he says to me, he's talking on the phone, and he says to me, he said, I'm the CTO at a Fortune 100 company. I'm the chief technical officer. I'm at the pinnacle of my career. He said, I've used 22 years working my way up to get to this position. And he said that, the problem I have is that with this senior executive team, with the board of directors and with the other vice presidents, he said, I'm the CTO. And yet he said, every time I start to talk to these people, I can't get them to listen to me. He said, as soon as I open my mouth, it's like they take up their iPhones and check their iPhones, or people kind of distractedly look away. He said, I'm starting to notice it. I can't get them to listen to me. And so I'm on the phone talking to this guy, and I'm thinking, how can I help him have more, what we call executive presence? How can he have more presence? And so I said to him, okay, I don't know you. I've never met you. But I said, let me feed back what I'm experiencing right here and right now. And he goes, okay. And I go, first off, you're speaking incredibly quickly. This guy was speaking at probably around 200, 220 words a minute. Just to give you an idea, Tony Robbins, when he gets on stage, talks about 220 words per minute, which is about the same as an auctioneer. We got a buyer over here, we got a buyer over here, we got three, we got four, we got four. He talks at that level. Now, he can get away with it. He's an outlier. But for most of us, when we talk that fast, what happens is that we lose our power. And the other thing was that the faster he talked to me, the higher his pitch went. So he started talking to me really, really fast. He was going, I got to get these guys to listen to me. And every time I open my mouth, they open up their iPhones. And do you hear what I was just doing there? He raised his pitch, voice pitch. And so I'm hearing this and I'm going, this is not helping you. So I worked with him a little bit, just focusing on the voice because it was a phone relationship. I had nothing else to work with. I couldn't see him. I couldn't work on it. So I said, fine, I want you to slow down. And he slowed down. And when he slowed down, his pitch dropped. And when he pitch dropped, then all of a sudden he became much more present. And when he became more present, his ideas became more powerful. And I started to listen to him at a different level. So I worked with him for a couple of weeks. I worked with him for a month or so. And finally, after one of the sessions, he called me back and he said, Rick, you're a miracle worker. And I just laughed and I said, what? And he just basically said, the nice thing about it was that he said that now they're listening to me. Now people are paying attention at a different level. I saw we just got the question there from even Linda about Obama. I don't have the statistics right now, but it's usually about 180 words per minute. That's where we're in the comfort zone. You can talk slower, you can talk faster, but if someone talks consistently at a really, really high pitch or high pace, we tend to tune them out a little bit. Okay, so to make a short...
What do you think is the biggest common problem when this comes to the voice when people are speaking? Is there anything you see again and again and again that people are doing that they could improve on?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first part, Frederick, is hilarious, and that's that we don't hear our own voices. That's the biggest problem. Yeah. You don't hear your voice, Frederick. I don't hear mine, even though I've done a lot of work with my voice. You know, it would be funny to ask the people who are listening in right now to please type in the chat if you truly love the sound of your voice when you hear it on a recording. How many of you truly love the sound of your voice when you hear it on a recording, video, and so forth? You know, nobody does. And the one person who says I do is bragging, because our voices sound different inside our heads than they do to others.
You think Donald Trump like his voice?
He's probably the exception. Yeah, he loves everything about himself. It's going to be great. It's going to be amazing. So the first point is that we don't hear our own voices. And because we don't hear our own voices, when we hear it on a recording, it sounds different. It sounds deeper and richer. So it's really funny, Pat-Eric, because in my head, the voice that I'm hearing is George Clooney. It's deep, it's sexy. I've got this amazing George Clooney voice. And yet when I hear myself on a recording and I go, that's not me. And, you know, my buddies will go, yeah, that's you, Rick. And I go, no, I'm George Clooney. And they go, no, Rick, you're not. The voice that we hear is different. And so because of that, we don't like it. And so then we don't want to hear it. And then imagine that your most powerful communication tool is something that you don't even know about. I mean, it's wild. We know about words. And I guarantee when somebody's preparing for a pitch or a presentation, they obsess on their PowerPoint. And most of us know a little bit about body, but few of us really have focused on words. And it gets even worse. And I know I'm going on here, so apologies, but it gets even worse because when we speak, our voice exposes what's really going on inside of us. In other words, if I'm bluffing, if I'm faking it, if I'm being unauthentic, you're going to hear it. Eventually, you're going to hear it. Only a sociopath can hide that, or a psychopath. Sociopaths and psychopaths can consistently hide, and even they trip up eventually. But the point is that your voice exposes. You're naked. If you get up in front of an audience and you don't know what you're talking about, they're going to hear it in your voice. And that's why we don't like our voices, because they expose us. A lot of things that people don't want to be exposed. If you're being truly authentic, then don't worry about it. But there are things that you can do to work on your voice to overcome some of those things. So I'm fascinated with the voice. It's an amazing part of influence that I think most people have never looked at.
So are people normally talking too fast or too slow, or is it any commenting, or is it just like is there anything, if you talk about
Sure.
entrepreneurs and selling, for example, what do you think they can do better to sell better with their voice?
Well, that's a complicated question, Pat-Eric, because we're all different. It depends on who you're selling to. It depends on what you're selling. It depends on who you are. Some of us are faster than others. Some people are slower. I heard an interview with John Malkovich just recently, and the voice of John Malkovich, you know, he's a he gets paid millions of dollars to do voiceovers for movies and films. He's an amazing voice. And yet he hates the sound of his own voice. And he said, my problem is I tend to go too slow and I sound like I'm laboring under heavy narcotics. So for him, he has a tendency to go slow. I think most people in general speak too quickly. If your objective is to have influence, if you're going to get on stage and have real power, in other words, you want people to really listen to your message. By power, what I mean is just the ability to get people to listen and take in your message. Then I think slowing down is something that we typically have to work with. I think also learning. Go ahead.
Yeah, come on.
So learning to slow down. How do you learn to slow down? Number one, relax. Number two, breathe. You know, I do a lot of breathing exercises. I do a lot of yoga type breathing exercises with my clients. And first they think it's weird, and afterwards they go, "Wow, that really works." It just naturally slows you down. The other thing that happens is that when you slow down and when you breathe, your pitch drops a little bit. Okay, you hear that? If I'm talking really fast and I'm really excited about something, listen to Tony Robbins, listen to Russell Brunson, listen to Gary Vaynerchuk. They're all really, really excited. They also have very high voices. They talk in the top of their voice, and that's great. It works for them. But unless you are that kind of amphetamine-prone personality, then slowing down is where we get more of our power. So again, I can't make any generalizations. It has to do with you and what you're trying to do. But there are certain things.
It's the same like we talked about Chet Holmes in the start. I've been following him and his training. And he also say that, or many sales trainers say the same thing, like the problem with salespeople is that they normally talk too fast. And they just want to come to the offer fast as possible instead of slowing down and tone down. So it's basically the same like you are saying. But I think I have a lot of people who are doing online business, and today everyone are going to do videos and all this stuff. And do you see any common problem that people are doing on weeds with their voice? Or
yeah, there are certainly common things that we do. I think you have to back up a step and you have to think about what's the purpose of communication. And powerful communicators, what do they do that's different than those people who are not that good at what they do? And I think it starts with connection. Powerful speakers connect with audiences. Powerful speakers connect with whoever they're talking to, whether it's an individual or it's a group. And they have that emotional intelligence, that EQ of really understanding, what do I need to do to connect with these people? And then they change their approach based on that. I think the bad communicators are the ones they're a one-trick pony. They have one way of doing things. They either talk really, really fast and really, really engaged, or they don't talk at all. And I think that's the problem. Great salespeople, really effective salespeople, they connect. And once they connect, then it's really, really powerful. And that's where it comes from. Okay, so I think that's the secret at this point right now is to focus on that. When I'm working with speakers and when I'm training with them, I'll do some work with you another time, Frederick. We'll have to set up a session and let me take the technology that I have, the voiceable technology, and analyze your voice, give you all kinds of scientific data about your voice. That'll be fun. That's my voiceable product. And then we'll take that data and we'll say, okay, now what do you want to do with this? And what we end up doing oftentimes is that thank you, Faye. I appreciate the compliment. What we do in one of those sessions is we try to figure out what different voices do you have that you can use. And most people don't realize that we have lots of different voices available. I have a program where I talk about 5 different voices. And it's a really, really interesting process to go through with a client where they realize, oh, wow, I do have all these different voices. Faye is asking, what should a woman focus on? I think it's the same as what men should focus on, this thing about connecting and this thing about being conscious of your voice. One of the things women have to work on, it's unfair, but women have to work on bringing their pitch down a little bit. Women have higher pitched voices than men, and the effect of that can sometimes be really unfortunate. Somebody's got a really high pitch and they just keep going on way up, and that eventually it becomes a problem because we cut it out. If you've got a high pitch and you're going very quickly, and now I'm generalizing and I'm going to get in trouble, Faye, but a lot of women like to talk faster in general than men. And so therefore we end up with a speed and with a pitch, which sometimes might work against the ability for an audience to really connect with your message and to really take it in.
Hmm.
Okay? So lots of things to work on, but realizing that you have different voices.
So you started a new company just for a couple of years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And you have been an entrepreneur all your life. How many companies have you started?
I have no idea, Patrick. I really don't have any idea, because when I was a kid, I grew up in a big family. We were 6 kids, and we didn't have a lot of money. So it was just you got one pair of pants and one pair of shoes and one shirt a year, and that was it. And anything else you wanted, you had to go out and buy. I always wanted jeans, and if I wanted jeans, I had to get a job. But it's hard to get a job as a 12-year-old. So what I did was I learned how to create jobs. So I went out and found things to sell. I got in trouble when I started selling my brother's comic books collection. That wasn't a good thing to do. But I learned how to sell things. I'd make a lemonade stand. I would find ways. As soon as it started to snow, I would jump out of bed at 6 a.m, fight my brother for the one snow shovel we had, and go up and down the street and knock on doors and ask if I could shovel their driveway for them. And people would gladly give me $2 rather than go out in the snow themselves. So that was me as a 12-year-old. How many businesses I've started, it's hard to say. I've done 3 or 4 tech companies, which have been a lot of fun. I did lots of things. And we can talk about that another time. But it's a lot of fun. Being an entrepreneur it's an attitude. But you asked about voice, and I wanted to mention this.
Tell me about your last company, because that's about your voice, isn't it?
Yeah. So here's the deal. A couple years ago, I'm learning how to listen to executives. I'm working with all of these executives and entrepreneurs for pitch training, and we work on their words, and we work on their body language, and we work on their voice. I call it words, music, dance. Okay, and I started to get fascinated by the voice because I realized it was this whole area that's being ignored. So what happened was that the more I listened to voice, the better I got at listening to things about voices. Like I can track speed and more or less the words per minute you're speaking at, because I've done that so many times. I learned to listen to pitch. I learned to listen to volume and intensity and modulation, how much someone goes up and down. So then I'm thinking, hey, wait a minute. If I can train myself to do these things, imagine what a computer could do. Imagine if a computer could track someone's voice, because a computer can track 10, 12 different voice characteristics simultaneously and very accurately, whereas I, as a coach, can only do it very, very subjectively, and I can only track 2 or 3 things at a time, right? So I'm thinking this would be brilliant. So I started researching what could we do if we were really going to analyze somebody's voice. And I found 2 PhDs in London, and we started working together on what's possible in terms of tracking. And we started to develop some really good tools for scientifically analyzing your voice. But what we also did was that we came up with a way to take excellence. In other words, what does Obama do that makes him excellent? The question came up earlier about pace. What is the pace that Obama typically uses? He goes slow sometimes, he goes fast sometimes. What's his average? And I started looking at, Obama has a lot of life in his voice instead of being really boring and flat and robotic. But Eric, I just came back from Finland last week, where I did a big workshop for a bunch of entrepreneurs for FinPro, which is the equivalent to Innovation Norway. And they all spoke like this. They said to me, Rick, this is an amazing product. It's going to change the world, and it's going to make us a much better place. And that's kind of their national way of speaking. And I love the Finns. They're amazing people. But they all sound like Stephen Hawkins. This is what it's going to be. And so I'm not making fun of Stephen Hawkins. I get that. But at the same time, when people speak like that, it just doesn't have a lot of life. Now, Obama, on the other hand, was interesting to listen to because there was a lot of life. He went up. He went down. There was more in that. So I started looking at these things, and we started to build a database of expertise. We took the top 100 TED speakers, TED talkers. Now, you've got to do something right when you've got over 5 million views. There are lots of people out there talking about neuroscience, but when David Eagleman talks about neuroscience, he gets 5 million views. Okay, now he's got the same words or ideas as lots of other people, but he's just really good at delivering it. So we started looking at this and then taking it apart and making all of this, taking the parts, the pieces together. I can see from the question from Øyvind, Obama used a lot of pauses. Exactly. So we created software that goes through and counts the pauses that you put into your speech. Every time there's a silence, is it a pause? How does that affect your speech? And so what we've done with this Voiceable, and people can find it at voiceable.me, voiceable.me. And what it is a technology to allow you to record your voice, get some scientific data, and then we try to predict how an audience is likely to respond to your voice. You know, you get up in front of an audience, Peter Erik, and the first words out of your mouth, the first 5 or 6 seconds, believe it or not, is when people's brains are going to start forming an opinion about Peter Erik. And they're instantly going to decide, hey, this guy's dynamic, let's listen. Or their brain is going to say, I don't know, maybe I can check my email, maybe I wonder what I'm going to have for dinner tonight. And it's that split second of first impression that people make is so important, and a lot of it's based on the voice, because the voice is where we get personality, authenticity, trust, emotions. They all come through in the voice. So that's why it's so important. So I got really interested in this and decided to create an app that you can use to test yourself, and an app that you can use to train. In the first version, which we're getting ready to release, all we can do is just some really basic calibration of your voice. But in the second version, which we're going to have out before, hopefully by the end of the summer, what you can do is you can hook it up to your iWatch. Okay, so I can hook it up to my Apple Watch. Okay, so that, let's say one of the things that I'm struggling with is to remind myself not to speak too quickly. When I get up in front of a group and I'm going to speak, I activate Voiceable. Voiceable listens to my voice, and because I'm interested in pace, if I'm speaking too quickly, the haptics on the phone will vibrate just to remind me, hey, slow down, Rick. That's when you're most powerful.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I need to test that. I'm a gadget freak, so I need to be you need to give it to me now.
We're getting there. But the idea is that we don't hear ourselves.
I'm interested in asking about a little bit about your entrepreneur career. So, and I always have a question on these talks. What is your biggest mistake like an entrepreneur? Well, do you have a story or something that you think, oh, there I did a crazy big mistake?
That's a hard. Thank you. Good question. Good coaching question. I had to stop and think. There are lots of stories that come to mind. Lots of stories come to mind there. I think one of the things is there are times when I didn't do things. I didn't take action on things. And that came back and was something that I really regretted. When I've made lots of mistakes. I mean, I'm old. I'm an old boy. I've been at this game for a long time. I've made lots of mistakes. Those don't bother me that much. No. It's the times I didn't take action. It's the times when I had a gut feeling I should do that. And it's not just about starting a company. Sometimes it's like I should pick up the phone and call that guy. I have an absolutely amazing opportunity right now that I'm working on with a Fortune 100 company who's very interested in the technology that we're doing with Voiceable. And it was one of those things where I made contact. I picked up the phone and did something a little crazy one time, and it had a great result. And if I had not done that, I know that I would have gone to my grave angry at myself that I didn't just pick up the phone just to see what happened. So I think those are the biggest mistakes I've made, Peter Erik. Those and the times when I've doubted myself. Because being an entrepreneur is, you know this, you're an entrepreneur yourself. There are tough times. There are dark nights. Yeah. Dark nights of the soul. There are times when you're wondering, why the heck am I doing this? This is crazy. I'm using all of my time and focus and energy. Why am I doing this? And those are tough moments. And I think that, and I guess the experience of being old is that I've been through so many of those dark nights that I know now that they'll be fine. I know now that I don't get stuck in them anymore. I know now that even though it's really tough, I had one even just a month ago with this new technology, trying to get funding, really, really struggling to get the bank to come get behind me to help me fund some of this. And so, it's one of those things where I was tempted to give up, or at least I was just so frustrated that my mind starts to play with that idea. Those are the things that as an entrepreneur, you regret later. Why did I do that? Why did I doubt myself? Why didn't I just keep pushing and pushing and pushing until I found a solution?
So what is driving you to start a company? You say you're old. I don't think you don't look so old. I know how old you are, but it doesn't look like you're so old. What drives you to start a company when you're
60?
You're 60. Yeah.
I don't know. Insanity. I think the only honest answer is insanity.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was thinking about that the other day. I saw a saying once that said that you don't stop playing when you grow old. You grow old when you stop playing.
Hmm.
And I think being an entrepreneur is
Wow,
the
that's
same
good.
way. It's about I'm really curious, and I don't ever want to die because there's so many things that are coming that I'm going to get to look at and see and experience and do. I can't wait until VR really takes off. The little bit that I've played with an Oculus Rift, it's amazing stuff, but we're just at the early days of it. And I'm kind of angry that I was born in 1956 instead of 1996, because then I could experience that. I'm totally fascinated by some of the AI stuff that's going on right now. Not because I'm smart and know anything about AI, just because it's amazingly interesting. We're building AI into this voice product that we're doing right now in order to analyze voices. And it's amazing what we're going to be able to do. And so for me, that's what drives me oftentimes, is that curiosity, that just excitement. And then the last 10 years, Peter-Erik, I've had the chance of working with all of these entrepreneurs. You know, I don't know if I've told you this, but between my workshops that I do and the speeches that I've done speeches or workshops in 34 different countries over the last 5 years.
Wow.
Primarily with entrepreneurs. And so the ability to be able to do that it's been so much fun. And I've met so many amazing entrepreneurs who are excited in their own right about what they're doing. And so I get infected by that. That drives me. That drives me. And I can't imagine a more fun group of people to work with than entrepreneurs. They're interested, they're motivated, they're exciting. So I don't know. I have no answer to your question other than insanity, but a good dose of it.
And you say that you have been in 53 countries. And when I talk to you sometimes, you say, oh, I'm in Dubai now. I'm in US now. I'm in Asia now. Do you like traveling?
I do love traveling. It was only 34. You made it into 53, and I don't want to claim that, but it was 34. Okay. But, you know, 2 weeks ago, I was in Finland. And I've done quite a few workshops there. And then last week I was in Moscow working with the Russians. And so it's just, I do enjoy traveling. I enjoy the people I get to meet. I enjoy walking into a room full of executives or a room full of entrepreneurs and really not knowing what's going to come out of that. There's kind of a magic involved with that. And then going through that process of connecting deeply with the group. And then being able to really see some of the amazing things that people are working on, to be able to see what amazing people they are, to really connect. I have the best job in the world. And I get to be an entrepreneur on top of that with this voice technology.
Yeah. And also you say that they're different in Finland, for example, when it comes to the voice. Do you see different cultures and how they use their voice in different all over the world, or?
Oh, hugely. It's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. And we're generalizing now. We got to be really careful because we're now playing to cultural biases and all kinds of things. But the further north you go in Europe, the more reserved people are. First off, the colder it gets. When the colder the weather, the more reserved the people get, the more they pack themselves in clothing during the winter. The farther south you go into Europe, the more down to the Mediterranean, the more people unclothed, the more kind of open they are, and the more the personalities are so different. So the challenge with the Germans, with the Norwegians, with the Finns, with the Russians is to get them to open up, because they don't like that. They're very closed. They're very you have to work. Even Norwegians. I mean, I love Norway. I'm not a citizen, but this is my chosen home. But Norwegians very oftentimes get out and they're going to pitch what's a brilliant idea, and yet it comes across completely flat. I had a fantastic discussion with Anita Krohn-Trolseth from Innovation Norway last year, where we were talking about this thing with voice, and she said it's disappointing sometimes when she goes to New York, for example, to the Tink project, and she takes a bunch of Norwegian entrepreneurs, and some of them are great, don't get me wrong, but quite a few of them, they're so monotone in the way that they speak, they're so flat in the way that they present that they don't come across well with American audiences, for example. And she says it's such a shame. Great ideas just don't come forth. When I go to Italy and France, and I've done work in Palestine and in Egypt, when I get down to that area, I've got the opposite problem. They're so full of life. They've got so much passion. They're full of that. And I have to kind of tone it down. Otherwise, the message gets lost in all the hand waving. So it's just hilarious, whether it's north, south, different cultures, engineers who are typically introverts as opposed to salespeople who are typically extroverts, and all different kinds.
And what about Asia and Europe? Is there any difference there?
Asians are, yes, absolutely. The cultural differences. And when it comes to my specialty, which is communication, we always get into some really funny things and fun situations. And I was thinking of a story just now. You asked about it. I was thinking of a story. A colleague of mine, who's a professional presenter or facilitator, was telling me this funny story, how she was in Singapore. And she was doing a workshop. She had about 40 people in the workshop. And every time she would give them a break in the workshop, she'd say, okay, let's take 15 minutes. Go have your coffee. Please be back in your seats in 15 minutes. And, 15 minutes would come along and half the room would still be outside. And she got frustrated with this. It's a cultural thing as well. But she got frustrated with this. And finally, after 3 or 4 times, she said, all right, I've had it. That's enough. She said, next break, you get 15 minutes. If you're not back in the room by 15 minutes, then you're going to have to sing a song for the whole group. She thought, I'll just embarrass them. So they take the break. 15 minutes goes by. There's still like 12 people missing. And she's like really frustrated and just like, what am I going to do with these people? She walks over to the door of the room. She opens up the door and all 12 people are standing right outside the door. And she goes, what's the deal? I asked you to get in here. And she goes, no. They said, we wait. We want to sing. Karaoke, yeah? Karaoke. They thought this was an opportunity to sing. So Asian audience is different than, yeah, absolutely. Lots of things that we could draw on there.
I see there's a new question from Fire. How can I make my voice as powerful, as wonderful as Oprah Winfrey?
Thank you for the question, Faye. Oprah is one of my heroes. She's an absolutely amazing speaker. She's an amazing personality. Since helping people with their voices is oftentimes about presence. It's about how do you connect with people and really show the depth of who you are from deep within. And that's a lot of inner work, by the way. Oprah Winfrey is one of my heroes. As a woman, I can't think of anybody who's more grounded, who's more powerful and just present than Oprah. She does it differently than other people do. You can say Michelle Obama is a great role model. She has a different voice. She uses it differently, but both of them do similar things. So what can you do? Faye, most importantly, listen. When you listen to Oprah Winfrey speak, stop and think a little bit about what is she doing with her voice? How quickly is she speaking? How often does she put in pauses? Is she speaking? Now, she has a voice range, which if you look at my hands here, they go from high to low. She has a really high voice, and she has a deep voice. And where is she most of the time? Is she at the lower part of her register, or is she at the higher part of her register? When Oprah is interviewing people and asking questions, listen to how she, first off, you can watch how she leans into people to signal, now I want to be close to you. And then listen to how she changes her voice. She'll ask a question to say, like Peter Eric asked me earlier, what are some of your biggest failures? And she puts a lot of pitch modulation into that. And it has a wonderful effect because it tells the person who's receiving the question, who's listening, she cares. Okay? So again, what can you do? The most important thing you can do if you want to be great with voice, don't worry about your voice. Pay attention. Listen. I think the biggest revolution for me, Peter Eric, over the last 4 years of working with voice has not been me trying to change my voice. It's two things. It's one, me connecting inside of me to what the real emotions, and if I want to talk to you and I want to connect to you, what is that emotion I want you to experience? And just to connect to that first inside me. Because then the voice just follows. I don't have to do any tricks or tips. I just have to make sure I go inside and check in with myself. What do I really, really want to communicate? And it's the same if I'm getting up in front of a group of investors, or as when I'm sitting in front of a group of friends, or when I'm talking to my girlfriend. I first connect inside. And then the second thing, which is so important, is just to learn to listen. Our brains hear much, much, much more than what we're conscious of. I mean, you have to think about this. Our brain is this massive biofeedback computer. And all the time it's being bombarded with sounds. Okay? And those sounds, only a small percentage of those sounds actually come to our conscious knowledge. The rest of them are filtered out, but yet our brain is still processing them. Have you ever met somebody, Peter-Erik, and just instantly you like that person?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what happens there? Well, there's a subconscious part of your brain that has basically put together a bunch of data and said, hey, I like this guy. I don't even know why I like him. He hasn't even said that much. There's just something about him I like. You're subconsciously, you've already made a decision and an investment in that person, but you're just not aware of it. It's the same thing with voice. Once you start to listen more carefully, you'll hear a lot more. You'll hear in people's voices when they're stressed. You'll hear in your lover's voice when she really, really loves you and says so. You'll hear it. You'll know it. Oh, that's it. That's the love sound. Or you'll hear it in someone's voice when an entrepreneur is talking. You'll hear that. You'll hear that commitment that he has, that says that I don't have the answer to the question you just asked me, but I will not stop until we solve that problem, because I've identified a really important problem for a customer and we don't have a solution yet, but I will not give up. And you'll hear that in their voice. And when you start to hear that, you start to identify it. So listening is the gift.
Yeah, and you also said that one of the problems with the voice is that we never listen to it ourselves. So so is that one of the tips you will give us, that we should start to listen to our own voice? Or
absolutely. First go in your heart, find out, what is it I want to say? Which emotion am I trying to portray? What is the real true intention? And then as you're speaking, listen to yourself. Come on one of my workshops. Peter-Erik, I'm inviting you right here. Come on one of my workshops. Next time I do a workshop, I'll invite you. You can come with me. And I'll teach you 5 different voices that you have. And you have all these voices. You're just not aware of them. Okay? And so then you stop and you think, here's my intention. Maybe I should use that voice. It's still authentic. It's still me. It's just a different part of me. Okay? You want me to give you an example?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I think for some people this is like, wait a minute, I only have one voice. I think a lot of people have this skepticism that I can't really do anything with my voice. I oftentimes have to work with executives and with entrepreneurs to get them to accept the fact that they have lots of things they can do with their voice. I'll give you 2 examples of voice. I'll give you 2 examples of voice. One is the earth voice. It's the deepest voice you have. In my register, it's all the way down here. It's the deepest voice I have. It's not a shouting voice, but it's at the deepest part of my register. This is the voice of sincerity, and this is the voice of authority. If I'm telling you, Peter-Erik, continue on, you're doing a good job with what you're doing, and I use that voice, it strengthens the message. Okay? It's the deepest voice I have. It's called the earth voice. It's also the root chakra, if you're into that. There's another voice that we have, which is the air voice, and it's at the opposite end of the spectrum. Steve Jobs used this all the time. It's the voice of vision. Air it's really high up. Imagine a world. Can you imagine what the world is going to be like when our technology really, really helps us, when it gives us feedback on how our voices truly are? Do you hear me right now? This is the voice of possibility. Steve Jobs would say, imagine an iPod and a network connection all in your hand, in your phone. Imagine what that'll be like together. He used that voice. It's very high up. It's the voice of vision. That's called the air voice. And that's just 2 of the 5 voices. So I can choose at any one time which voice I want to use in order to strengthen my message. I'm not being fake. I'm not doing something that's inauthentic. I'm just emphasizing my point. So I see a question here or a statement here from Anya Dietrichs where she says, I have an air voice. Absolutely. We all have an air voice. The question is, do you only use your air voice, or do you sometimes drop down into the earth voice and use that voice when you need to get someone's attention? Anya, if you're talking to a teenager, you can't just use the air voice all the time because they won't listen to you. Sometimes you have to drop down. And that's all, just learning to do that. So again, I'm rambling here. This is obviously something I'm very passionate about and something that the reason why I'm so interested in it, Peter-Erik, is just because I think so few of us stop to think about voices. And again, I'm an audio freak, and I'm a highly auditory person, but at the same time, voice is something that we all can learn so much from. So anyway, I want to say thank you for inviting me. This has just been fantastic to have the chance to chat with you like this. I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I'm thinking I'm going to have to do a Facebook Live and bring you on.
You have to do that. And well, if there is any questions, we'll have to Rick, just ask them now, because we have some few minutes left before we are leaving. And I also have a question. What's your vision with your new company? What's your goal or vision with it?
Well, thank you. Good question. Good question. I could easily say to build a powerful company, blah, 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 but that's not really what it's about. Because if I don't connect to the real purpose, then it's just kind of meaningless. You asked me earlier, what drives me? Okay. One of the things that drives me is the fun and the joy of creating something. Okay. It's been a real creative process to create an app, to figure out what's possible, and then to build something out of it. That whole process of just making something. I know when you're a kid, what do? You grab some sticks, you tie them together, you make something, and you're proud of the fact that I just made something. Yay. There's a lot of that. But that's just one thing at a much deeper level than just building a company and building something which I think can be a really, really interesting global technology. The other thing is the ability to change the world. And I've had the privilege, Peter Erik, and I mean, sincere privilege of working with some amazing entrepreneurs, working with some amazing business people. A couple of years ago, I did a workshop for female entrepreneurs in Palestine, in a war zone. And I met some of the most amazing women I've ever met in my life. And in some tiny little way, I helped them. In some tiny little way, I gave them a little more hope. And hopefully I also gave them a few tools that they could use. And for me, that's also what drives. So what do I see this company doing? First off, I see it changing how we think about voice. My iWatch is going to become a part of my technology that just listens to me and helps me out when I am working on something. If I'm doing a training, if I'm trying to train to speak slower, my iWatch will help me with that. And I think that'll help a lot of people, because ultimately, speaking is about communicating, and communicating is about, as I said earlier, I think I started by saying it's about connection. And anything that helps us to connect with other human beings is vitally important. And so I feel like in some tiny, tiny, tiny little techno way, I'm helping to make the world a better place by helping people to communicate a little more clear, a little more powerfully. I saw the question came up earlier from someone, when you're talking to that teenager, and you really need to get them to listen. Feeling at least that I have some tools that I can use. If you're talking to that board of investors and you really need their help to build the company that you're building, then having the tools to be able to do that are hugely important. And so somehow I feel like if I can do that, it'll all be worth it. And it's a lot of fun in the process.
Cool. Thank you. I also called you for I think it's 4 or 5 weeks ago, and I asked you to do this Facebook Live. Also, if you want to speak on Awesome. So this is a surprise for everyone. I think some of you have tickets, but if you don't have tickets today, because we're almost sold out. We have sold 80 tickets or something, Rick. I think it's amazing.
That's great. That's great for an event in October or November, I think. Yeah.
It's in the end of October.
End of October, and I'll be there. So, I'll be speaking. I will teach you the remainder of the 5 voices, the other 3.
Cool. But you said something. I can think about this, Rick, or whatever, and you say, no, either I do it or I don't do it. Is that one of your life thing that you?
No, thank you for reminding me of that. That was a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, and you asked, are you willing to do it? And I thought about it for a second, and I said, hell yeah. And then I said, one of my mottos this week is, whenever I'm deciding trying to do something, either I should not do something, which is an important part of being an entrepreneur, is learning when to say no. It's either going to be no, or it's going to be hell yeah. Hell yes, I'll do that. And either I got to say no to things, and learning to be better about saying no to some things is important. But if I'm going to do something, let's do it. Hell yeah, let's do it. You ask me if I'll get up in front of a group of people and speaking, and I'll always say yes to that because I love doing that. And at the same time, I'm going to go into it. I'm going to tackle it with enthusiasm, and I'm going to put I'll come to that event prepared to do my best. That's the difference.
That's cool. And the other speaker, I know that you know Thomas quite well. You're a friend with him, isn't it?
Thomas Moen, yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah.
Thomas
I saw
is
he
amazing.
was on the line today.
Yeah,
so
he was on the line.
there is an event on, it's 3 last time, but I find out that we need to do more again. I can never stop doing events and bring in more things. So I had a plan to never do 3 days event again after Elevate, but now it's just stuck with a 3 days event for entrepreneurs, marketers, and salespeople about online sales and marketing. So you will talk about the voice, and then Thomas will talk about Facebook marketing, building trust. Me and Maria, we are working on a new crazy email funnel with like 40 follow-ups and all these system things. So we'll talk about that. And then we have Lene Fjellheim from Coach Team. She will talk about a little bit about how the future will be with more marketing and sales tips, and also her story, because she's also a really successful entrepreneur.
She's got a great story. Lena's got great.
And then we have Christopher Bertelsen. He's a LinkedIn guy, and he will guide you through how you can put up your LinkedIn profile in 2.5 hours, like get a better LinkedIn profile. So, and I think I've missed some speakers, I don't know. But anyway, it will be a great 3 days event, and there is a party on Saturday night, because one of the things from Elevate, and I also think you know it, I'm really passionate about get entrepreneurs and like-minded together and just talk and share ideas. And normally when we do events, you can speak, I can speak, all the other speakers can speak, but in the end, when you talk about the event in 3 years' time, we'll talk about the people I met there. It's always like that. When I talk with someone, I was at Elevate for 4 years ago. I have some great friends from there still. So it's always about connecting with other. So Hilde Kloppbakken, good that someone are there. Hilde is also coming and speaking about. She will talk about pricing, because she will help you to. So and Erlend Bakke is coming also. You know.
Oh, fantastic! That's great.
It's good that someone are on the line that can help me and write in.
So Peter Erik,
and Erlend is also a friend of you.
That's right. Erlend's a very good friend of mine. So in answer to that, I'll be there, and hell yeah, I'll be there. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So I have a link there. So if you want to buy a ticket, just do it now. It's 50% off now until 1st of July, but I think we'll be sold out before that. And do you have some more you want to say to the audience, or something, the last message you want to give them?
No, I really don't. I want to thank all the people who've joined us. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you, Peter Erik, for inviting me. I've really enjoyed it, and you've let me talk a lot, and so I appreciate that. I hope I haven't talked too much, but I really do appreciate it. So to all of you, the secret, the thing I'm going to leave you with is listen. Learn to really open your ears and listen, and don't be surprised if your voice changes as well.
Cool. Thank you so much, and thank you for taking time. I know you are a busy man, so I really appreciate it. And thank you for all of you who have been listening today. And if you have questions for Rick or me or whatever, just write them in the chat box, and we'll answer them later. So
thank you, everyone.
Mona says thank you very. Okay, thank you, Rick, and have a nice day.
Okay.
Klarer jeg ikke ennå?